Welcome back. President Trump instituting a U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz today, beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern, after peace talks with Iran fell apart in Pakistan. Look at the Strait this morning, and we are also watching ships, supertankers, go to the Gulf of America to buy oil and gas from the U.S. I spoke with the president about it yesterday. Watch.
We were well represented, but we didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons. Most countries shouldn't be allowed to have, but that country will not have nuclear weapons. Mr.
President, was that the red line there? Can you explain to us what went on in these talks?
Started off weak. They came in like they had the cards, but they don't have the cards. Their army, their whole military is obliterated. The whole place is obliterated. They haven't left the bargaining table. I predict they come back and they give us everything we want. And I told my people, I want everything. I don't want 90%. I don't want 95%. I told them, I want everything.
VP J.D. Vance now presenting what he's calling a final offer to Iran, which includes red lines such as ending uranium enrichment, ending funding to groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and no more collecting tolls in the Strait of Hormuz and charging supertankers fees. Meanwhile, this morning, Russia says it is ready to take in Iran's enriched uranium as part of a future peace deal with the United States. A Kremlin spokesperson telling reporters today, quote, this proposal was voiced by President Putin in contacts with both the USA and regional states. The offer still stands, but has not been acted upon. Joining me now is Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I want to get your take on all of the above. Let's start with Russia. Russia coming to the rescue, on the uranium.
Well, it's at least good to see other nations step in and try to offer a hand here. Russia is going to be impacted. The whole world is going to be impacted once the Iranian regime is taken down. This unholy axis that you've seen, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, it's time for it to break. And I think the Iranians are creating an embarrassing situation for all of them.
And in terms of Iran, Senator, what are your thoughts on this blockade? How does this play out? You heard President Trump's comments to me yesterday.
Well, I think what the Iranians are seeing is a very different negotiating style. You remember the last time they sat down and talked about nuclear arsenal and nuclear ambitions with the U.S. president, that was under Obama. Their negotiator, the Iranian negotiator, walked out of the room and John Kerry chased him out of the room. They broke, the Obama administration broke and gave them everything they wanted in terms of being able to pursue their nuclear ambitions. President Trump has made it clear that he will not do that. The Iranians tried that old play again. It didn't work this weekend. J.D. Vance stood strong. I think the Iranians are seeing it's a different play now, and President Trump is doubling back on them and shutting them down, blockading the Iranians and cutting off all revenue at this point. I think they're realizing this is a very different game, and I'll be anxious to see how J.D.'s latest and final offer is received by the Iranians.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if the next front in this war is largely economic. I mean, look at what's happened to the Iranian economy, right? And I mean, of course, the military has been, decimated. But when you even with the price of oil where it is, the president told me yesterday he's going to continue this maximum pressure campaign.
I think it's entirely appropriate to do that. It worked last time. We were almost there in the first Trump administration. You and I have talked about it before. My job was to get the Japanese government to stop buying Iranian crude oil when I was U.S. ambassador to Japan. That happened all over the world. And again, John Kerry inserted himself and suggested to the Iranians that they should wait and see what would happen in the 2020 election. Again, Biden comes in, opens up all the spigots, money starts flowing to Iran, and they're back in the terrorism business. President Trump is not going to allow this. The Iranians need to get the message. And I think after this weekend, Vice President Vance, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner have delivered that message loud and clear.
So what was your reaction to Japan, even Japan, one of our closest allies, pushing back on participating and helping the United States in the Strait?
I think these nations need to step up. They're much more impacted. Japan, South Korea, China, other parts of the world are far more impacted on what happens in the Strait than we are. President Trump is trying to deliver a good for the entire world. I think the world needs to step up and support this effort. Iran has always threatened to shut the Strait of Hormuz. This has been their playbook for decades. They're trying to exercise it now. It's not going to work.
And what about your role, Senator, in terms of your support of the president's asks here? He wants, obviously, a $1.5 trillion defense budget. Reconciliation has now become top of mind. Where are you on all of these issues?
Yeah. The reconciliation process is already underway. Senator Barrasso, Senator Graham met with the president just recently. Our teams have been working on putting a reconciliation bill into motion. When we get to Washington later this evening and tomorrow, we'll be full on it. And the reconciliation process, as you know, is one that requires no Democrat votes. The Democrats have put us into this situation. They're not cooperating at any level. Maximum resistance. They've shut down the Department of Homeland Security, and they've indicated that they're not going to do anything to cooperate with President Trump or the Republicans. So we're going to move forward on this endeavor. The reconciliation process has to be tied to the budget. That's precisely the type of thing that we can use, again, to open the department, also to deal with defense, and several other items that I hope we'll be able to address.
So do you really think that we're not going to see the Department of Homeland Security open until June 1st when you get a reconciliation bill together?
Well, President Trump has found a way to deliver revenues there to keep the department open. But I certainly haven't seen any indication that the Democrats are going to cooperate as yet. Perhaps they'll change their tune this week. The American public certainly are tired of these sort of antics. But I think we need to continue to move along the direction of a reconciliation bill to do it as quickly as we possibly can. Again, President Trump has set the deadline for the 1st of June. I'm certainly hopeful that we can do it sooner than that.
Okay, sooner than that. Now, what about the Kevin Warsh confirmation hearing for chairman of the Fed? Now we understand that it's being delayed because of banking committee paperwork, including financial disclosures. I spoke with your colleague, North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer, about it a couple of weeks ago. Here's what he said. Watch. Are you targeting the week of April 13th for Kevin Warsh's confirmation hearing?
Well, that's the plan at this point, but plans get changed a lot. I think it's important to have the hearing. The hearing doesn't need to be held up by the shortage of one vote. Obviously, some things are best done privately, but when you get to this point, having the hearing, I think, is important, and I think that will help move the ball forward. Because at the moment that we have the breakthrough, whether it deals with the charges against him getting dropped, or whether it's Tom Tillis coming to a different conclusion, we have to be ready so that there's not a second of gap between the expiration of Jay Powell's term and the beginning of Kevin Warsh's term. There's no reason Democrats should not vote for him.
So what do you think, Senator? You're on the banking committee. Do you think we're going to see this hearing take place? Is Tom Tillis going to vote for Kevin Warsh?
I certainly don't know how my colleagues are going to vote, except to say this. Kevin Warsh has already been a decade ago voted out unanimously by the Senate. So he's been confirmed before. I think he's been meeting with senators on both sides of the aisle. I think he will do very well in the voting process. With respect to the machinations in the Senate Banking Committee and going through the confirmation process, I believe I'm the only senator that's actually gone through this confirmation process myself when I was up for U.S. Ambassador to Japan. It's a complicated process, lots of paperwork. It may get moved a few days here or there, but I'm with Kevin Cramer. We need to go ahead and have the hearing, be ready to go. Jay Powell's term ends on the 15th of May. We need to be ready.
Yeah, and, he's already threatened that, well, maybe he'll stick around.
Well, I think Kevin is the man for the moment right now. The markets are ready for Kevin. He's focused on productivity, on making investment a top priority, on private credit here in America and credit formation. Yeah. And again, getting the Fed back to its core business, taking out the basic mission drift that took place over the past years, where they were focused on climate change and DEI activities at the regional banks, and even inclusion or inclusiveness included in the maximum employment mandate. I think we'll get back to basics. The Fed will be the engine that it needs to be to support our economic growth.
Senator, I got to get your take on AI, because the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, called what we understand was an emergency meeting last week with the major banks, along with Jay Powell, to talk about the issues around agentic AI and whether or not this Anthropic leak of the Claude code and the source code has opened up vulnerabilities here. What are your thoughts on the vulnerabilities of AI with regard to the banking sector?
I think what we've seen is that Secretary Bessent is on it. He's on target, and he's making certain as this new technology evolves that we're utilizing it in the most effective way possible. If a vulnerability is identified, and again, AI can be utilized to identify vulnerabilities and shore them up as much as it can be used to attack vulnerabilities. I'm very pleased to see that he was on it, that he brought in banking leaders to address it, and they're staying ahead of it. The last thing I want to see is regulation that would shut down the innovation that AI promises. We need to win in this game. The United States needs to lead in this innovation, and there are often voices in Washington that suggest we should shut it down, that we should stop it. But in that case, who then takes the lead? China, others. We need to be careful, and I think Secretary Bessent has demonstrated that sort of care.
Well, I mean, is there a role for Congress in terms of putting guardrails in place for AI? Given all of these worries about agentic AI, where the AI could potentially take on its own personality, robotics, and go against humanity? I mean, is there a kill switch in place that Congress needs to have their hands on?
You certainly are correct, Maria. I think having rules of the road in place, guardrails, certainly does make sense. I just don't want to see them so tight and so overly prescriptive that it kills the industry. We saw this with the stablecoin legislation that I passed, the Genius Act. We put in place guardrails, and now that technology is thriving, but it can't be overly restrictive. Yeah,
absolutely. I understand that for sure. Senator, it's great to see you. We so appreciate you taking on all of these very important issues. All right, we'll see you soon. Senator Bill Hagerty.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.